chairman of Slate and a board member of Penn. I want to begin tonight by thanking the Brooklyn Public Library for hosting us here on the steps and supporting this event. I'm proud to be here at the two institutions we're going to visit tonight, the Brooklyn Public Library and the Brooklyn Museum, whose existence is based on the right to free expression. 15 years ago, some of you may remember, that right was challenged by Mayor Rudy Giuliani. He wanted to evict the museum and cut off its funding because he was offended by some art that he hadn't seen and didn't understand. And people came together here in defense of artistic freedom, and they shut down Rudy Giuliani instead. Today, we're here in response to a more distant but more fundamentally serious threat to free expression. It's not the mayor who wants to shut down a show at the Brooklyn Museum this time. It's the Chinese ambassador and officials of the Chinese government. There are over 40 writers on Penn's case list who are currently detained, in prison, or on trial in China. And of those, 6 are members of the independent Chinese Penn Center, including the poet and essayist Liu Xiaobo. Another is a member of the Uyghur Penn Center. Yes, there is a Uyghur Penn Center, Ilham Tohti. And many people on this list began their advocacy in 1989 during the student-led democracy movement, whose 25th anniversary we're commemorating this year. Ai Weiwei was detained incommunicado for 81 days in 2011. And after his release, he was warned not to speak to the press, to the media, and his passport was confiscated. I happened to meet him not long after that in Beijing, when he was happily defying the order not to speak to the press, including me. And I got to know him a little bit as an artist who absolutely refuses to compromise with the Chinese Communist Party or with any kind of censorship. And for that, he's subjected to daily surveillance, and he hasn't been allowed to travel outside of China, which he did constantly before his time in detention. Ai Weiwei's situation illuminates the situation of a lot of others whose renown hasn't sheltered them from long prison sentences. Liu Xiaobo serving an 11-year sentence for inciting subversion of state power. For 7 phrases he wrote in an essay, and for the groundbreaking Charter 08. Our last event like this was a protest on his behalf on the steps of the New York Public Library in 2010. And after Penn's president at the time, Anthony Appian, nominated him, he was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. Liu Xiaobo's wife, the poet Liu Jia, has been held under extra-legal house arrest since then. Other writers in China live under daily threat or have had to flee the country, and you're going to hear about that in their own words tonight. Despite the risk, citizens in China continue to speak out, to push back against censorship and against oppression every day. Their names are bywords, these names, for moral heroism, and we're here tonight in solidarity with them. And with that, I want to turn the event over to my good friend and one of my favorite writers, Jennifer Egan.
Thank you all so much for coming. Can you hear me? No? Okay. The poet and novelist Ha Jin could not be with us today, but he felt it was important to be part of this effort, and he sent this statement, which I will read to you, the first of 2 readings I'm going to give. I am pleased to join you this evening in protesting the persecution of Liu Xiaobo, Liu Jia, Ai Weiwei, and many other Chinese writers and artists. In recent decades, China has established a shameful record of political oppression. Numerous people have been imprisoned because of their political views, and hundreds of exiles have been barred from returning to their homeland. Because I wrote about the Tiananmen incident in my fiction and signed Charter 08, a document composed by Liu Xiaobo that demands basic democracy for China, I have been denied a visa and cannot go back to see my family. In fact, when my mother passed away last fall, I still could not return for her funeral. I had not seen her for 28 years. There are many exiled dissidents in the same plight. They cannot see their families again. Yet by comparison, those dissidents inside China have suffered much more. In the long run, China's political oppression will undermine its ambition to become an open, progressive country. The Chinese leaders lately have been propagating the notion of the Chinese dream. Of course, we would all like to see a strong and prosperous China. However, such a dream must not be based on any individual's pain and suffering. Otherwise, it will only become a Chinese nightmare. Here, I appeal to the Chinese government to release Liu Xiaobo, Liu Sha, and other prisoners of conscience, and to stop abusing Ai Weiwei and other dissidents. I also have a dream for China. I hope that someday any Chinese citizen can criticize its president or premier publicly without being singled out as an oddball. This is the second reading. In October 2010, our colleague, poet, literary critic, and activist, Liu Xiaobo, won the Nobel Peace Prize. On the day of the announcement, the Chinese government immediately went into damage control mode and put Liu Xiaobo's wife, poet and artist Liu Sha, under house arrest. She remains confined to this day, more than 3 years later. She is suffering from a heart ailment and depression from her years of isolation. While so many activists are imprisoned for speaking out, we often forget that families are the ones who pay the heaviest price. I'm going to read an excerpt from a letter that Liu Xia sent to a friend, which was translated by Perry Link and published in the New York Times in January. Dear X, I've read your epistolary novel. If I imagine myself an outside reader, I can only wonder how or through what special power you manage to keep on writing when the protagonist for whom you are pleading is absent. It moves me. I have always loved reading. Most of the books in our home are ones I personally purchased and brought here, and most of the hours in my life are spent reading them. I describe myself as having grown up feeding on books. My reading has no specific goal. For me, it's rather like breathing. I have to do it in order to live. When I find books that I love, I feel the author is writing for me alone and feel a private joy. Please tell X that the book I am currently feeding on is A History of the Gulag. Living in almost total isolation, I find the road before me populated by countless books. I hide among and meander in the world. You can imagine how terrified I felt to face the world alone after they came to take Liu Xiaobo away. I have had no choice but to accept that reality. I have been extremely tired. I chose this life myself, so need to see it through to the end. Next time, I'll write only about happy things. Liu Xia, July 26th, 2013.
Hi, I'm Chang-Rae Lee. As we've seen in so many instances, writers who might be considered dissident face a choice: silence, prison, or exile. The writer Liao Liwu has experienced all three. I'm going to read an excerpt from his essay, The Garbage Dump and Organized Crime, translated by Scott Savitt and published in Penn's 2013 report, Creativity and Constraint in Today's China. Liao now writes from Germany. As an old-fashioned writer, I seldom surf the web, and the Arab Spring passed me by. But staying on the sidelines did not spare me. When public security officers learned that 2 of my books were going to be published in Germany, Taiwan, and the United States, they began phoning and visiting me. And in March, my police handlers stationed themselves outside my apartment to monitor my daily activities. Publishing in the West is a violation of Chinese law, they told me. Your prison memoir tarnishes the reputation of China's prison system, and God is Red distorts the party's policy on religion and promotes underground churches. If I refused to cancel my contract with Western publishers, they said, I'd face legal consequences. Then I received an invitation from Salman Rushdie asking me to attend the penned World Voices Festival in New York. I immediately contacted the local authorities to apply for permission to travel outside China and booked my plane ticket. But the day before my scheduled departure, a police officer called me to, quote, have tea, informing me that my request had been denied. If I insisted on going to the airport, the officer told me they would make me disappear, just like Ai Weiwei. I was shaken. In the end, I decided to leave my loved ones and worldly possessions, took a wild chance, and fled China. I kept my plan to myself. I didn't follow my usual routine of asking my police handlers for permission. Instead, I packed some clothes, my Chinese flute, a Tibetan singing bowl, and 2 of my prized books, the records of the Grand Historian and the I Ching. Then I left home while the police were not watching and traveled to Yunnan. I switched off my cell phone after making brief contacts with my friends in the West who had collaborated on the plan. Several days later, I reached a small border town where I could see Vietnam across a fast-flowing river. At 10 a.m. on July 2nd, I walked 100 yards to the border post, fully prepared for the worst, but a miracle occurred. The officer checked my papers, stared at me momentarily, and then stamped my passport. This is the second reading. When we think about dissent in China, so often we forget about Tibetans and Uyghurs, instead thinking that these ethnic groups face a completely separate set of problems than those facing Liu Xiaobo, Liao Yiwu, and Liu Xia. The Tibetan poet Wozer, who lives in Beijing and writes in both Chinese and Tibetan, reminds us that freedom of expression is at the heart of it all, regardless of your ethnic background and the province where you live. Wozer faces daily surveillance and is often placed under house arrest. I'm going to read her poem called Serves You Right, translated by A.E. Clark. The blades, we know, surround us like a forest. But see, there drips from each knife edge the sweetest honey. Can't help sticking out our tongue to lick. Such sweet honey. Take another lick, and another lick, and another lick. Oh, my tongue. What happened to our tongues? How'd they get cut off? She wrote this on October 3rd, 2007 in Beijing. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Alison Klayman. Tainted food scandals have been all too common in the last several years and have been of grave interest to the entire public in China. An independent Chinese Penn Center member and investigative journalist Zhou Qing is one of the many who exposed the crisis. He wrote about it in a 2004 expose. Imprisoned for almost 3 years after Tiananmen, Zhou endured more than a decade of unrelenting harassment before leaving China in 2008 to live in exile. I'm going to read an excerpt from an interview he gave Penn to discuss the limits of art in public space, the fear of truth, and censorship. It's really great. After I published my book, What Kind of God?, I invited my friends out to have dinner near the Olympic Bird's Nest Stadium. When I went to the restroom, 3 men ambushed me and beat me unconscious with beer bottles. My friends discovered me by following the blood. They called the police. I had to get 32 stitches on my face. That wasn't a remarkable or frightening incident. It aligns with my experiences of Chinese society. What's horrifying is that after I reported my case to the police, they very coolly said, "You're not."
Since 1989, when he was detained after leading a hunger... Closer? Can you hear me now? Better? Okay. When Liu Xing has placed an even heavier burden on his beloved. I'm going to read his poem, Greed's Prisoner, translated by Jeffrey Yang. Empty-eyed, all-ignorant dictatorship has plundered your corpse. In one night, white hair covers the crown, completing his legend, his myth, the moment he sees himself brimming with righteous deeds. You already possess nothing, but this prisoner has deathly seized the blank space of your future. Another day and managed to smuggle it out of the country. This untitled poem was translated by Ming Di and Jennifer Stern. Is it a tree? It's me alone. Is it a winter tree? It's always like this all year round. Where are the leaves? The leaves are beyond. Why draw a tree? I like how it stands. I'm too old to see, blind. Perhaps you don't even know how to draw a bird at all. You're right. I don't know how. You're an old stubborn tree. I am.
Good evening. I'm Sergio De La Pava. On January 15, dozens of police officers raided the Beijing home of Uyghur writer and scholar Ilham Tohti, arresting him in front of his 2 young sons. An extraordinarily respected public intellectual and an advocate of dialogue, Tohti, also a member of the Uyghur Pen Center, created a website, Uyghur Online, to discuss the basic human rights issues facing his people. Chinese authorities have now charged him with separatism, which could lead to life in prison or even the death penalty. Because of his efforts to build bridges between all ethnicities in China, PEN is awarding Tohti with the 2014 PEN Barbara Goldsmith Freedom to Write Award. In the months before his arrest, Ilham Tohti acutely felt the pressure that was building around him. I'm going to read an excerpt from a statement he gave in July of last year, which he asked be released if he was detained. There is a lot of tension around here.
Corporations and even creative institutions are deepening ties to China. Those willing to speak out are fewer and more important. Shivering on the library steps 4 years ago, Dr. O spoke directly to Liu Xiaobo. Old friend, we will not forget you. We will not rest until you're free. We haven't forgotten. We won't rest. PEN helped make Liu Xiaobo as close to a household word as a Chinese dissident writer can be. We now have a new name that needs to be spread far and wide. And you heard his chilling message tonight, a message written 9 months ago in fear of what would soon happen and did happen. The name is Ilham Tohti. He's a Uyghur Chinese scholar and writer, published mostly online, part of a new generation of online writers and dissidents. He's a peaceful advocate of human rights and cross-cultural understanding. His website was blocked, his family was threatened, and then in January of this year, just as he predicted, they came for him. As his 2 young children watched from the sofa, they ransacked his house and they took their dad away. Now he's been charged with separatism. He's being held without access to a lawyer. PEN will award him our 2014 Freedom to Write Award early next month. The Chinese are not happy. They've accused the criminal. But Tohti's only crime is writing and speaking his beliefs. You heard it in his own words. And I hope you'll join us in petitioning, tweeting, writing, and blogging until he too is freed. We'll share the details with you in the next few weeks. Even if we can't get Ilham Tohti freed, we want the Chinese government to know that we're watching. And those 2 little boys
The library, sorry, library.
Hi, Larry. Hey. I'm 310 Ai Weiwei.
Yeah, he was just at a museum.
Yes.
So actually, I was with him in your house. You're Larry.
Yeah, I'm Larry. Yes. How are you? Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you. So you work where were you in the studio there? 没有，他跟我合作过。
He wants to create a show for
Oh.
So you just want to say hi.
Oh yeah.
I think he mentioned I will wait for you.
Well, we did it, but I was on staying here. I wanted to. You in New York? How long are you in New York? How long are you here for? Yeah. So Talisa works with her. This is. I always send them here.
Hey guys, everybody, we're going to start walking so we can start getting people over here. We're going to start heading down to the museum.
We'll be here for 10 days. So I wanted to come by. Okay. Take his information.
We're walking to the museum. Are you guys almost mobile? Hi guys, we're going to start headed up that way.
Okay, 你有名片吗？找我。我去了，我昨天去看了展览。
没有，还没有。
那我们以后
That's your life update right now. Yeah.
Camera's live. I know. Where?
So I don't know.
We're following all the people.
Unviolent. Okay. You get it right. I don't know if you could hear it all the time. I heard
So, drop dead. I mean, I got you hooked up. I've shown them around.
You took her?
I didn't speak to her, but.
That's him right there. He made it.
Okay.
Where do you want us? In front? Your level or one above you?
If you guys in the back want to get to the left, right, so with the tag degree.
Move around, you guys in the front. Bring the Ai Weiwei posters down in front.
How we doing?
So if you can take the people on the far right and bring them down in front here.
Okay.
All right, I guess someone should stand back there.
Okay, everybody.
Oh, yeah.
This is the center. And so if you can kind of angle yourself, the letters do not have to, just towards the center. So we're all going towards the center. If you're out of edge. And Suzanne, can you put down your S just a little? Yeah. Okay, this is great. All right. Yeah, this is a long exposure, so hold still, please. And free, can you get a little higher just for a couple seconds or a little while? EXPRE. Just a little higher. Okay, and free is awesome now. And Siobhan, can you put your S up a little? I'm sorry, you can't. Well, we could put down. So Siobhan can see. Can his expression come down so she can it up? Yeah. Okay, and David, if you could just slash down a little, because you're tall guy.
Have me come down?
Yeah. Like be more Becky and Alex type. Okay, and you too, Matthew.
Start clicking.
Can you like squat down like?
Just squat down in front of
David,
the
yeah.
bench. Squat down in Becky and Alex.
Okay, so this is absolutely wonderful, and it's all in progress. So we're doing our picture. Okay. If you with the freedom sign want to hold it up more, we can see it better. Yeah, just not in front of the end. Yep. Okay, we're almost done, guys. Have you got your shots? Are you happy? Yeah. Out here, there's going to be a video tonight. Projected. That's right. And then we're going to go walk to the video. Showing it with those fists. Yeah. Everybody got their shots? Yep. All right. Yeah.
and poetry, and which can, all those expressions together can discuss what a human is about ourselves. I have a passport, and I'm still under kind of self-detention, which is not right. We have to have to encourage individuals to become part of the society through free expression, to pursue the society and to bear responsibility and to contribute our ideas or thinking about what kind of society we live in and what kind of future we'll have. Thank you for coming and thank you for your contribution. Thank you for coming in supporting free expression. As an artist, I think free of expression is a very essential foundation for any kind of activity. And also freedom of expression is to encourage every individual to question the authority and to become more creative. So this is a very, very essential values for artists to protect and to fight for. And it will never come as a gift, but rather through our artworks, our voice, our lines, our music, and poetry, and which can, all those expressions together can discuss what a human or humanity is about. So only by doing that, we can have a better society, we can work together, and we can have more discoveries about ourselves. Thank you for this act. This is very important, not only in China, but elsewhere in the world. So we are together fighting for freedom of expression. In my case, I don't have the rights to travel now, I don't have my passport, and I'm still under kind of self-detention, which is not right. We have to have to encourage individuals.
Director of Membership. Mic check. Mic check. Mic check. Mic check. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for coming.
To take a stand.
To take a stand.
For Chinese writers and artists.
For Chinese writers and artists.
We just heard from Ai Weiwei.
We just heard from Ai Weiwei.
And we know that this struggle.
And we know that this struggle
is larger than one man.
Is larger than one man.
It is for.
It is for.
Liu Xiaobo.
Liu Xiaobo.
Liu Sha.
Liu Sha.
Ilham Tohti.
Ilham Tohti.
Liao Yiwu.
Liao Yiwu.
Wo Sir.
Wo Sir.
Zhou Qing.
Zhou Qing.
And all the unnamed writers and artists.
And all the unnamed writers and artists.
In China and elsewhere.
In China and elsewhere.
Living in fear.
Living in fear.
Or in prison.
Or in prison.
As we leave here tonight.
As we leave here tonight.
We must see this.
We must see this.
As a new beginning.
As a new beginning.
In the struggle for.
In the struggle for.
Freedom of expression.
Freedom of expression.
So take out your phone.
So take out your phone.
And follow us.
And follow us.
At Pen American on Twitter.
At Pen American on Twitter.
Like us on Facebook.
Like us on Facebook.
And join us for the Penn World Voices Festival in 2 weeks.
And join us for the Penn World Voices Festival in 2 weeks.
Most of all.
Most of all.
Please continue.
Please continue.
To stand up.
To stand up.
For all writers.
For all writers.
Who sacrifice their freedom.
Who sacrifice their freedom.
And now.
And now.
We will break our handcuffs.
We will break our handcuffs.
Thank you for asking.